Today's incident is about a man who was a doctor but killed more than 200 people. Harold Shipman's childhood. Harold Frederick Shipman was born on January 14, 1946, in Nottingham, England. He came from a middle-class family. His father, Frederick Shipman, ran a small business, and his mother, Vera, was a homemaker. Harold was the only child in the family. As a child, Harold was quiet and serious. Unlike most children, he did not show much interest in active play. At school, he was an average student, sometimes doing well, but also following strict rules. Even in his early years, he displayed a certain solitary tendency, preferring to spend time alone. His father was very strict, and Harold was taught discipline and order from a young age. While his family loved him, the father-son relationship was never particularly close. Harold often spent long hours alone in his room, reading books or lost in his imagination. Even in childhood, hints of his darker personality began to appear. He could not tolerate disorder, struggled to understand the emotions of others, and often thought about life, death, and control. At the time, these were just childish thoughts, but they later foreshadowed the dark traits of his adult personality. At school, Harold was intelligent but socially limited. He had few friends, and teachers described him as quiet but mysterious. He enjoyed reading, solving mathematical puzzles, and experimenting with different activities. This early combination of isolation, strict upbringing, and an unusual tendency to think differently played a role in shaping his disturbing and later sinister personality as an adult. Harold Shipman's teenage and college years. Harold Shipman's teenage years were marked by strict discipline and a deep sense of isolation. His father remained strict, and Harold developed a strong tendency toward self-control. Although he began to seek more independence during adolescence, family rules often kept him constrained. At school, he was academically bright, particularly excelling in science and mathematics. Socially, however, he was distant. He had few friends, and many classmates considered him strange or mysterious. During this period, a pattern begins to emerge. He observed people closely, noted their weaknesses, and seemed to derive a sense of control from understanding them. At the time, this appeared to be simple curiosity or experimentation. Harold later entered college with a keen interest in science. He enrolled at Leeds School of Medicine, focusing intensely on medical studies. His solitary tendencies deepened during college. He rarely socialized, dedicating most of his time to studying. Teachers described him as extremely dedicated but difficult to understand. While training as a doctor, Shipman often reflected deeply on human vulnerability and the process of death. At that stage, it could be seen as a scientific curiosity, but in hindsight, these thoughts foreshadowed the darker aspects of his personality. From his teenage years through college, several traits became evident: social isolation, obsession with rules and control, fascination with human weakness, preoccupation with death. These traits later formed the foundation for his medical career and ultimately for the horrifying path of serial killing. From becoming a doctor to the path of murder. Harold Shipman graduated from medical school in the early 1970s and began working as a general practitioner (GP). His initial postings were at small clinics, primarily caring for elderly patients. At first, he appeared professional and attentive, showing genuine concern for his patients. But over time, his mindset began to take a darker turn. Shipman developed a deep fascination with life and death. He noticed that his influence over elderly and vulnerable patients gave him a certain power. He realized that some patients would follow his instructions or treatments without question, giving him a sense of control over their very survival. This slowly fostered an obsession with dominance and authority over life. By the mid-1970s, Shipman had regular access to elderly patients through his practice. In some cases, he gained a reputation among families as a competent, caring doctor. Behind this facade, however, he began experimenting with secretly ending the lives of some patients. At first, his motive was largely control, the sense of power over life and death. His method of killing was extremely subtle and professional. He generally used lethal injections of diamorphine medical-grade heroin. Most of these deaths occurred in patients' homes, leaving little suspicion. He became a skilled silent executioner, ensuring deaths appeared natural, caused by illness or old age. A pattern gradually emerged. 1. Carefully selecting patients, mainly elderly or infirm. 2. Displaying courtesy and concern to families, avoiding suspicion. 3. Secretly administering injections that would cause death. 4. Occasionally benefiting from wills or procedural control after the patient's death. The combination of medical authority, desire for control, and fascination with death ultimately led him down the path of serial killing. Early on, he killed a few patients under the guise of natural death, then gradually expanded his victims over the years. During this period, a distorted sense of moral justification also developed in Shipman's mind. He believed he had the right to determine the correct time for someone's death. This was not simply professional confidence, but the emergence of a dark, compulsive mindset. Harold Shipman's murders: numbers, methods, and patterns. 1. Number of victims. Confirmed: 15 victims proven during trial and conviction. Estimated or suspected: over 200, primarily elderly women. Many deaths were initially recorded as natural or expected due to old age. 2. Methods: modus operandi. Shipman mainly used lethal injections of diamorphine medical-grade heroin. Most killings occurred in patients' homes. He would often keep the families calm, making the deaths appear as natural illness or old age. Sometimes, death certificates or medical records were falsified to hide foul play. He carefully selected his victims, primarily isolated elderly women, those easily influenced or controlled. After the deaths, he occasionally benefited from wills or procedural authority, though not always. 3. Patterns of serial killing. Early phase: killed a few patients under the guise of natural death. Later phase: gradually perfected the method and killed systematically. Typical routine: 1. Assess the patient's health. 2. Show concern and sympathy to families to avoid suspicion. 3. Administer lethal injection secretly. 4. After death, sometimes gain control over property or maintain influence. His killings were clever, professional, and secretive. Deaths often appeared so natural that no one suspected foul play for years. 4. Targets and approach. Primary targets: elderly and infirm patients. Primary method: lethal injection, usually at home. Consistency: carried out over more than 25 years. 5. Psychological profile influence. Murder driven by a desire for control, a sense of power over life and death. Belief in a form of justice or authority to decide when someone should die. Social isolation and fascination with vulnerability of the elderly reinforced his actions. Shipman's combination of methodical planning, professional status, and obsession with control made him one of history's most secretive and professional serial killers. Now, let me tell you about 3 of the murders he committed. Case 1: Kathleen Grundy. On June 24, 1998, 81-year-old Kathleen Grundy, a wealthy and active elderly woman, was visited by Dr. Harold Shipman. She was generally healthy, exercised regularly, and participated actively in her community. Shipman arrived at her home, speaking softly. "You've been in pain. I'll give you an injection that will help." Kathleen trusted him completely. Within minutes of the injection, her breathing slowed and then stopped. Shipman himself completed the death certificate, writing, "Cause of death: heart attack." The shocking truth was worse. Shipman had altered her will so that some of her assets would go to him. Kathleen's daughter became suspicious and reported it to the police. This case later became the key evidence that exposed Shipman. Case 2: Nellie Dawn and other elderly patients. Earlier, in the early 1990s, an elderly patient named Nellie Dawn suddenly died under his care. She was only mildly ill, but Shipman gave her an extra dose of painkiller. Within minutes, she was dead. As usual, He recorded her death as natural causes, or old age on the certificate. Case 3 Early victims. Shipman's killing pattern began in the late 1970s. One by one, he targeted elderly women in his practice. Using morphine or diamorphine, he administered lethal doses under the guise of treatment. Almost all were lonely, vulnerable, or living alone. Their deaths were all officially recorded as natural. Harold Shipman, capture and trial. How he was caught. Shipman had killed secretly for many years. Authorities began noticing irregularities in deaths and suspicions from families. A key clue was the pattern of deaths among his patients. Families noticed that patients under a particular doctor were dying at a higher rate than expected. By 1998, local health authorities in England began reviewing the deaths of his patients. Police investigations eventually revealed that Shipman was illegally using diamorphine injections to kill patients. Arrest. Harold Shipman was arrested in February 1998. He was charged with the murder of 15 patients, all proven to be premeditated killings. Trial. The trial began at Leeds Crown Court in 1999. Key evidence included 1. Unusual patterns and discrepancies in death certificates. 2. Testimonies from families and medical records. 3. Excessive amounts of diamorphine in patients. On January 31, 1999, Shipman was found guilty of all 15 murders. Sentence and outcome. Shipman was sentenced to life imprisonment. He died in prison on January 13, 2004. Before his death, the true scale of his crimes was not fully revealed, but it is estimated that he killed over 200 patients. The end. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? Subscribe to The Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button right here on The Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to The Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.